I always believed that rock bottom would feel like silence, stillness, a quiet sort of defeat. But it doesn't. It sounds like laughter, your neighbors laughing behind your back. It sounds like the crinkle of an eviction notice being shoved under your door while your 8-year-old son asks if dinner is going to be cereal again. And on that particular Tuesday, it sounded like Cassandra upstairs, screaming at her delivery man for bringing the wrong shade of velvet throw pillows. While I packed our lives into 3 suitcases and a torn cardboard box, I hadn't told Tommy yet that we'd have to leave. Again. He was too busy lining up his toy dinosaurs on the kitchen counter, talking to them like they were family. Maybe because deep down, he knew we were all each other had. 2 months behind on rent, 2 jobs, 0 help. I felt like I was drowning in slow motion. And then the final blow came, knocking on our front door in the form of Cassandra's smug voice. "Oh, Maya. Sorry, didn't realize you were still here. I thought you'd be out by now. You know how Elena gets." She was standing there in designer yoga pants, sipping something iced and overpriced, her phone angled ever so slightly to catch my reaction. Behind her, Leo gave me that look. The one people give stray animals, half pity, half disgust. I smiled, or tried to. "Just finishing up," I said, pretending that the burning in my chest was anything but shame. As soon as she left, I turned away from the window. My hand trembled as I grabbed the duct tape to seal one of the boxes. I didn't cry, not then, not yet. Tommy looked up at me, eyes wide and too wise for his age. "Mommy, are we gonna sleep in the car again?" I forced a laugh, knelt beside him and brushed his curls off his forehead. "No, baby. This time, we'll have a roof, I promise." I didn't know if that was true, but when you're a mother, sometimes you borrow strength from the promises you make, just to survive another day. That night, at the diner where I worked, I smiled through my shift. Refilled coffee cups, cleaned tables, served meatloaf to men who didn't tip and women who whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. Near closing, one of my regulars, an older man who always sat at booth 6, left me a $20 tip and a folded napkin. On it, just 7 words, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Sometimes tests look like tragedies at first." I stared at it for a long time. That night I walked home under the weight of the world and those words. Back at the apartment, Cassandra was hosting a party. Music thumped through the walls, laughter echoed down the hallway. I passed her open door, intentionally open, no doubt, just in time to hear her joke. "Maybe she can rent a cardboard box next? I hear alley views are very in this season." Laughter followed. Loud, cruel. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. But I didn't stop walking. I had one more thing to do before the move. Talk to Elena. Maybe beg. Her door was old, paint peeling like it had secrets. I knocked. She opened it slowly, peering at me with eyes that never revealed what they were thinking. Elena was always like that, a woman carved from stone, unsmiling, silent. I launched into my plea. "I'm close, Elena. I have half the rent and I'll have the rest by Friday. Just a few more days, please. Tommy's school year just started, and I don't want to uproot him again. I'm not asking for a handout, just time." She listened, said nothing, just stared at me the way a mountain might regard a gust of wind. Finally, she nodded once. "Be out by Friday." And that was it. I stood in that hallway for a long time, heart beating so loud I thought it might wake the building. Back inside, I sat on the floor while Tommy slept and held that napkin from the diner. Sometimes tests look like tragedies at first. I didn't sleep that night. I just packed. Again. By Thursday afternoon, everything was loaded into my brother's rusty van. The few things we had left. I locked the door of that apartment for what I thought would be the last time. Tommy was quiet, hugging his backpack, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to read between my lies. That's when I heard the sound of slow footsteps behind us. I turned. It was Elena. She stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, keys dangling from one hand. "Come with me," she said. I blinked. "What?" "Just come." I followed her. Down the alley behind the building, past the trash bins, past the parking lot, until we stopped in front of something I hadn't even known existed, a second building, smaller, hidden behind the trees, dusty windows, peeling paint, a faded red door. Elena walked up to it, unlocked it, and swung it open. It was empty. Dim. Smelled of old wood and possibility. She turned to me and held out the keys. "You're moving. Just not out." I stared at her, mouth open. I don't understand. I own this unit too. It's been empty for years. You fix it up, it's yours. No rent for 3 months. After that, we talk. Why? Her lips curled, just barely. Call it a test. I took the keys. My hands were shaking. I looked around the quiet, empty space. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't the backseat of a car, and it wasn't another night of crying behind gas station bathrooms. Tommy tugged on my sleeve. Is this our new house? I looked at him. Then at Elena, then back at him. Yeah, baby, I whispered. Yeah, it is. But what I didn't know then was that this old dusty apartment held more than a second chance. It held secrets, connections, and a past I thought I'd left behind. Because in the back of that closet, buried beneath forgotten furniture and spiderwebs, was something that would change everything. And that is where it all really began. I didn't sleep that first night in the new place. Not because it wasn't quiet, not because Tommy couldn't stop asking questions, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. But hope is fragile, like glass. It shines in the light, but all it takes is one wrong move, and it shatters. That hidden apartment, Elena's mystery unit, looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The floorboards moaned with every step, the wallpaper was curling like it was trying to peel itself away from the past. Cobwebs crowned the corners like lace. And yet, there was something beautiful about it. Tommy raced from room to room like it was a castle. This one's my room. Can I put stars on the ceiling, Mommy? I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was tight, my heart even tighter. The windows were dusty, but when I wiped them clean, sunlight poured in like gold, spilling across the floor. We didn't have much. A blow-up mattress, a suitcase with our clothes, a pan, 2 plates, a kettle. But for once, we had walls that were ours, even if just for a little while. We cleaned for hours that weekend. Every stain scrubbed away felt like reclaiming something. A piece of dignity, a piece of peace. I'd wake up at dawn, take Tommy to school, head to my diner shift, come home, and scrub, paint, fix, repeat. Exhaustion became routine, but so did pride. And Elena? She showed up on the 3rd evening, no knock. Just a slow creak of the front door, followed by the familiar echo of her footsteps. She walked in, surveyed the space with that same unreadable expression. I had painted half the living room a soft blue. Bought secondhand curtains, even added a little potted plant in the window. She looked at me. Coming along, she said. I nodded. Thank you again. I mean it. I don't know why you. She raised her hand to stop me. I didn't do it for you, she said flatly. I did it because I believe in unfinished stories. Then she turned and walked out. Her words stuck with me. Unfinished stories. I lay awake that night, watching the ceiling, thinking of mine. I'd once been a pastry chef in training, culinary school, internships, dreams bigger than my fears. But then came love, betrayal, motherhood, and survival mode. All my dreams were boxed up and buried beneath rent receipts and overdue bills. But maybe it was time to open those boxes again. I started baking again. At night when Tommy was asleep, I'd make pies, muffins, cookies, anything I could afford with the leftover ingredients from the diner and whatever I could scrape together from coupons. It was clumsy at first, rusty, but it came back, like muscle memory, like breathing. I gave a few to neighbors. I left some at the front of the school with little notes, and people noticed. One evening I found a note taped to the door. Do you take orders? No name, no number, just a folded $10 bill tucked underneath. It felt like the universe whispering, keep going. Tommy was happier too. He made friends at school. Stopped asking about the car, started talking about the stars he wanted on his ceiling again. But not everything was sunshine, because Cassandra had noticed I hadn't left the building. One morning, I caught her peeking around the back alley as I walked Tommy to school. She squinted, confused, almost angry, like she'd lost track of her favorite source of misery. She smiled too wide. I thought you moved out, she said, pretending to sound sweet. I shrugged. We found another place. Same building? She asked, tilting her head like a vulture sniffing for rot. I nodded, but said nothing more. She hated that. That evening, Leo showed up while I was sweeping the front step. He leaned against the doorframe, casual and curious. Elena's never been generous with anyone, he said. I didn't respond. He studied me like I was a puzzle missing a piece. Why you? I met his gaze and smiled. Maybe because I didn't ask for pity. He scoffed and walked away. But the truth was, I didn't know either. Why had Elena chosen me? I was just a waitress, a single mom. A woman barely holding it together. What did she see? That night the rain came down hard. Tommy and I stayed inside making cookies by candlelight. We danced in the kitchen. For a moment, it felt like the kind of life people posted online but never actually lived. But then, while cleaning out the front closet, I found something strange. An old box. Heavy, dust-covered, tucked behind paint cans and broken hangers. Inside were folders, dozens of them, yellowed with time. Names, documents, photographs, and one photograph, one in particular, froze me in place. Because there, standing next to a much younger Elena, was Mr. Goldstein. I hadn't seen him in over 8 years, but I'd know that face anywhere. He'd been the director of my culinary school, my mentor, the first person who told me I had a fire in my hands. Why was he in a photo with Elena? I flipped it over. Scribbled on the back, in faded ink, were 3 words, "Trust her, Maya." My blood ran cold. How did he know I'd end up here? Why had Elena chosen me? Was this apartment really just a second chance, or was I part of something bigger? I sat on the floor, holding that photo, heart pounding in my chest. And for the first time, I realized my story hadn't just been paused. It had been rerouted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was being watched, guided, tested. And whatever test I was in, it was far from over. Because just 2 days later, I got a call. From a name I never thought I'd hear again. The first time I heard someone say, "I'll take a dozen," I nearly dropped the phone. It was the PTA president from Tommy's school. She wanted my cinnamon rolls for the upcoming fundraiser. 12. 12. I didn't even have a dozen muffin pans. Just 3, and one of them was missing a cup. But I said yes anyway, because something inside me, a spark I thought had died, had flickered back to life. And I wasn't about to snuff it out again. I stayed up late that night. The apartment smelled like brown sugar, vanilla, and burnt hope. I burned the first batch. The second was dry. But the third, golden. Perfect. Just like I remembered from my days in culinary school. I laid them out on a tray lined with the only nice dish towel I owned, and when I brought them to the school the next morning, I expected polite nods. But what I got was chaos. Before I even left the parking lot, 2 other moms asked for my contact. One teacher offered to pay me under the table for birthday cupcakes. Another handed me a card for her cousin's catering business. Tommy beamed, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the broke mom. I felt seen, respected, capable. That feeling, God, I'd missed it. But as quickly as the glow came, so did the shadows, because I wasn't the only one who noticed. Later that week, I walked past Cassandra in the hallway. She looked up from her designer packages, eyes narrowing. Well, she said, voice like syrup over broken glass. Didn't realize this place had room service now. I didn't respond. You know, Elena never liked tenants being too comfortable, she added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was digging for answers. I gave her none. And that silence, it burned her more than anything I could have said. Back inside, I checked my tiny calendar. 5 orders this week. Not bad for a girl who used to cry into expired instant noodles. And then, the call came. It was around 2 p.m. I was dusting powdered sugar over lemon tarts when the phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Maya Rivers? Yes, this is Jordan. I work for Mr. Goldstein. I nearly dropped the phone. Mr. Goldstein, my old mentor, the one in the photo with Elena, the man who'd once promised to launch my career. He was the reason I'd gone to culinary school in the first place, and also the reason I'd quit. 8 years ago, after the fallout with Tommy's father, after the court dates, after the scandal, I'd vanished from that world, ashamed, broken. Jordan continued. Mr. Goldstein asked me to reach out. He's been following your progress. My, what? He tasted your pastries. Someone dropped off a sample. He said, and I quote, "She still has the fire in her hands." My knees nearly buckled. He'd like to meet, Jordan added, if you're open to it. That Saturday, I took the bus to a quiet part of the city, one lined with boutiques, galleries, and cafes where everything cost more than my entire grocery budget. Jordan met me out front and led me to a narrow building with floor-to-ceiling glass and minimalist decor. Inside, I saw him. Older, grayer, but still with that unmistakable sharpness in his eyes. He smiled. I knew you'd come back eventually. I sat, unsure what to say. He didn't waste time. I've started a new incubator program for small culinary entrepreneurs, women especially. I want you in it. I blinked. Me? He nodded. Elena said you'd fight me on this. She said you'd still be humble to a fault. But you've earned this. You never stopped creating, even when the world tried to crush you. I sat in silence. Every part of me wanted to say yes, but I couldn't ignore the wound. The memory of how fast I'd been forgotten when things got hard. Why now? I asked. His expression softened. Because sometimes the ones with the most potential fall the hardest. But if they get back up, they're unstoppable. He handed me a folder. Details. A stipend. Classes. A showcase. A new start. I walked home that night floating. Hope had grown legs. It was running beside me now, not dragging behind. When I got back to the building, Alina was waiting by the steps, as if she'd known. She said nothing at first, just watched me with that quiet, calculating calm. You sent the pastries, I said finally. She nodded once. And the photo, with you and Mr. Goldstein? I told him you'd forgotten who you were, she said. He agreed. But why me? I asked. Why go through all this for me? Her eyes gleamed. Because someone once did it for me. And then she left. Back inside, Tommy was waiting. He ran into my arms, chattering about a spelling bee and a new class hamster. I looked around our little apartment, the peeling walls, the crooked shelves, the smell of sugar clinging to the air, and I realized this wasn't just a second chance. It was the start of a legacy. But as I stood there watching Tommy draw planets on the wall with washable markers, I noticed something new. A letter had been slipped under the door. No return address. Just my name, written in handwriting I recognized immediately. Tommy's father. I froze. It had been 6 years since I'd heard from him. No calls. No visits. Nothing. But now, after all this time, he was back. I stared at the envelope like it might explode in my hands. My heart pounded. Just when I thought I was finally free of the past, it came knocking again. I stood there for a long time, just staring at the envelope. My hands were shaking. My chest felt hollow, like all the air had vanished the moment I saw that name written in messy, familiar handwriting. Tommy's father. The man who disappeared 6 years ago like a ghost with my trust and half my heart. And now, of all times, now, he wanted to come back? I didn't open the letter that night. I tucked it into the back of a kitchen drawer like it might disappear again if I ignored it long enough. But life didn't stop for old ghosts. Because that week, I opened my bakery. It was small, just a cozy corner shop with pale blue walls, white counters, and the smell of fresh bread dancing through the air. A place where I'd spent every last cent I had saved and borrowed from Goldstein's incubator fund. But it was mine. Tommy stood beside me, beaming, scissors in hand. When he cut the ribbon, people cheered. Customers, teachers, other moms from school. Even my old manager from the diner showed up with flowers. And in the back, standing near the display case, was Elena, quiet, watching. She never smiled wide, but that day she gave me one of those tiny, proud nods that meant more than 1,000 words. And Cassandra? Oh, she showed up too. Draped in designer sunglasses and fake politeness. Wow, she said, looking around. Didn't know you had it in you. I smiled. Apparently, I've always had it. You just weren't looking. She laughed awkwardly and gestured to the case. Any chance I can get a box of those lemon tarts? I'm throwing a little brunch this weekend. I leaned in slightly. For you? Of course, but I'll need payment in advance. She blinked, lips tightening, and I just turned to help the next customer. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't cruel, but I'd grown. I didn't beg anymore. The weeks passed, orders doubled. I hired 2 part-time helpers, both single moms from the neighborhood. Tommy decorated the bakery walls with his star drawings. We called it Maya's Place, at Elena's suggestion. Everything was finally settling into the kind of life I'd once only dared to dream about. But the letter, it waited. Until one evening, after I'd closed up shop and Tommy was asleep, I finally opened it. It wasn't long. Just a page. He said he'd been watching from a distance, that he was sorry, that he saw my name mentioned in the local paper's small business spotlight and recognized the woman I'd become. He asked to meet, just once, to apologize in person. He said he wasn't coming to take anything, he just wanted to see his son, if only from afar. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe to close a chapter. Maybe for Tommy, maybe for myself. We met at the park. He looked older, weathered, like life had hit him just as hard, maybe harder. He didn't make excuses, didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't cry. He simply said, "You raised him right. Without me, I had to see it." And then he handed me something small, a pendant. One I used to wear back when I still believed in fairy tales. I kept it, he said. Thought maybe one day you'd want it back. I didn't know what to say. We didn't hug, we didn't promise to stay in touch. But as he walked away, I didn't feel pain, I felt free. The next morning, a legal envelope arrived at the bakery. This time it was from Elena. My heart skipped. I thought maybe it was paperwork about rent increases or zoning issues, but when I opened it, I stopped breathing. It was a deed, a property transfer. Elena had signed the apartment over to me, not rented, given. With it came a letter. Maya, you passed every test. Not because you were perfect, but because you were persistent. You reminded me of who I used to be, and who I forgot I could still become. Now it's your turn to own something. Not just the keys to a door, but the keys to your future. Time to be the landlord of your own life. Elena. I sat on the bakery floor with that letter in my lap, tears dripping onto the tiles. I had started this journey with eviction notices, secondhand shame, and whispered judgments behind closed doors. And now, here I was. A homeowner, a business owner, a mother, a fighter. A woman who got up and stayed up. I had lived through laughter behind my back, and now, the applause was in front of me. Not for being perfect, but for surviving. If you've ever felt laughed at, left out, knocked down, let this story be your reminder. Your beginning does not define your ending, and even the darkest chapters can set the stage for the brightest ones if you just keep turning the page, because you never know who's watching, and you never know what doors are waiting to be opened, until someone hands you the keys. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If Maya's story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next powerful story. Want more inspiring narratives like this? Check out the next video in this series right here, or dive into more stories of redemption and resilience on the channel. Because sometimes, the most beautiful comebacks start where everyone else thought your story ended.